Live. Hello, everyone. Whoever is in the chat right now. I hope you're all doing very well. Welcome to the official kind of virtual launch event for All These Sunken Souls, the YA Black horror anthology that is taking the world by storm. I'm just so excited to be here with everyone tonight to discuss horror, to discuss kind of what inspires us, what makes us like truly go into like the nitty gritty of everything gruesome and delicious. I am not hosting the like discussion like panel stuff. That is for our editor, our amazing editor, Stacey Moskowitz. So I'm going to hand it over to her now to kind of go ahead with that. So yeah.
I had to unmute myself. I'm so excited to talk about this, which came out on Tuesday. All the stories in it are really incredible. Please go buy it. But before I get into the official questions here, because we're in Spooktober, what have you guys been watching lately? Like horror movies, horror books, anything fun?
I guess for me, my book club this month are reading Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, which has been amazing so far, and I'm really, really enjoying it. I actually got The Spirit Bears Its Teeth in the mail today, so I think I'm gonna be reading that next. In terms of like other like spooky stuff, I've been listening. I That's going to be an answer for later, but I'm currently listening to the Magnus Archives, which is like a horror podcast, which I will be referencing later. So I'll keep shut about that for now.
Yeah, I've been reading the new Jordan Peele edited anthology. So I've started that one because after I read our anthology, I was like, okay, next one, let's read another one. And I'm also reading I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me, which I'm also really enjoying. The bathing, the in a lake of blood, the unhinged ballet vibes. Yeah. And I have also read The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, which is so, so good.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the two things. It's okay, a book I've been reading and then a movie I just watched. So I just finished Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. It's her newest book. And if you are at all interested in cults, scream queens, and honestly, any of Rachel Harrison's, it's not a discography. She's not a musician. She's an author. The rest of her books, I'll say, I would highly suggest it. I had a really good time. I feel like most of her work, like once you start, you can't stop. And I absolutely loved it. And the movie that I just finished is called Slaughterhouse, not Slaughterhouse, Sloth, because it is about a sorority getting hunted by a killer sloth. And it is an hour and a half long, and it's on Hulu. And it is the worst hour and a half you'll ever spend. And when it's over, you'll be like, wow, I'm kind of happy that I bore witness to that. So I'm putting everyone onto Slaughterhouse. It's on Hulu. You're welcome.
I definitely added that as you were speaking. I was like, all right, let me just, make sure I look what that is up. For me, I watched The Fall of the House of Usher, which I enjoyed. But I'm easy to please, so it could be hot garbage, and I'm like, oh yeah, Slaughterhouse is top 10 of the year. And I just watched The Taking of Deborah Logan. I typically I just randomly will do horror marathons and stuff like that. And the last one, I didn't get the chance to do it, but what was Taking of Deborah Logan was on the list. And I was like, you know what? I'm in the mood. That was my kind of carrying on. I love that movie so much. I was like, this is some ridiculousness that I can get behind. So that's the two things that I enjoyed.
I love that so much. And I definitely need to watch the movie about the killer sloth. I mean, just so I can
so fun. It's such
so I can see it with my own eyes.
I don't want to ruin too much, but the sloth is very it does very human things. I don't want to ruin it, but there is a point where the sloth calls an Uber
So you're basically saying like Sid the Sloth from Ice Age if he was a like maniacal serial killer existing in the modern day.
Wait, I love that bit.
It's on Hulu. Please watch it. It's so funny.
No, that kind of brings me to my first question for you guys, because for me, horror is like a really great way for us to explore topics that we're normally taught to skirt around. And for me, that's very cathartic to talk about the more ugly and grotesque parts of the human condition. So I'm wondering, what appeal does horror have for you? Yeah.
I think for me, I think like this anthology was really like the first time that I got to like properly explore horror as like a genre that I would want to write in, because I had written horror bits before in like university and stuff, but I didn't think like I would ever write genre horror as like part of my career. But I think reading horror and really like immersing myself into it, it really just allows us to act on like the hidden desires that people have and kind of what things leaking under the like lurking under the surface that people really want. And I think there are just certain things within the realm of imagination that can only really manifest itself in horror. And I think for me, it's where like the intersection of fantasy and horror comes in really well, because like you can literally just bring the most like grotesque things to life, and you know, people will find that fun. And there are just certain parts of like growing up watching slashers, growing up watching like little bits of like horror stuff, and my older sister showing me like the behind the scenes of how they made things come to life. It really just I don't know, I think it's just kind of like horror's always been there, but I haven't really like embraced it until now, and now it's everywhere for me. So yeah.
I deeply agree with Joel. So I come from a horror loving family, and I always talk about how different members of my family had different subgenres that they loved. So like my aunt loved slashers, my grandma loved like space horror. My mom is indeed a vampire werewolf girly, so I did kind of steal hers, but I like to pretend mine is different because I like it when they're gay. So it's not the same as my mom. It's different. Um, but I kind of grew up with horror, and it was something that I thought everyone enjoyed. Like I thought everyone was like, "Oh, like you don't like watch Friday the 13th with your entire family?" People are like, "No, we didn't do that." And so for me, I found myself drawing more towards horror when I got older, because it was something I did take for granted so much when I was younger. And as I got older, I realized that it's a genre that embraces the taboo. It's a genre that allows you to explore those sort of like darker feelings that you're not supposed to discuss in public. So things like grief, things like forbidden desire, which is what queerness is often painted as. You have all of these like non-mainstream themes that sometimes are a little tricky to put into a more straightforward genre. But because it's horror, you can kind of say, well, it's supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be weird. And I feel like also horror readers are so accepting. Like it's a great community of people. And I feel like they're some of the best readers ever, because they'll be like, yeah, this was a mess. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen, and I loved it. And I think that's amazing. So yeah, I came around to it eventually, and I'm really, really glad that I did.
For me, I also similarly was raised in a horror loving family, but it was really just, my mom is very, very into horror. Like, I honestly, when you said the Sloth movie, I was like, I should tell my mom about that because she gonna want it. She gonna want to know. But growing up with her, she loved herself a creature feature. She loved her, bees, trimmer, anything that's just like one word and it's coming after you. That's what she loved. And that's kind of how I got into horror. Like that's how it kind of started to appeal to me as a writer. Is that I love a monster too. And like I love writing about that thing that is scary. And, one of the funnest parts for me is, as we may not have known, but may have guessed, I am Black. And I've always been like, Freddy Krueger, how do I handle this as a Black person? How do you handle this? Because you can't be like, I'm out, I'm not dealing with this. He up on you, you know? And I think like that, since I'm more of like a comedic writer, like that's where like the true like dedication first came from. Cause I was just like, it would be so funny watching like Black people like try to deal with monsters that they can't just nope away from. Like it's just, the concept is funny to me. And honestly, I'm a one-trick pony, but I'm happy with that, you know? Just write about Black people having to deal with these things that they don't want to deal with, but they got to because it's there.
I feel like that's one of the first questions I ask myself when I'm writing like a horror book with Black people is like, how do I explain why they are involved in this and why they didn't just like leave right from the beginning? But for me, horror, I feel like similar to Sammy, me and my mom watched all sorts of horror movies. My mom had me in the theater as a baby watching horror movies in the theater. So like she was very dedicated and she'll watch like anything. Like she went to Human Centipede, the sequels, when I was like, I'm not, it's done, one and done. She's like, no, you got to watch the other ones. And so I feel like to me, there's something special about the emotions of horror and like this sort of discomfort and like how it can elicit these really uncomfortable feelings, but you'll still sit there and like participate in it because part of you really loves it and there's something like special about that. And I feel like in books and literature, it kind of makes it easier to talk about other topics that are uncomfortable or like sort of you want to kind of look away from because you're already in it, like you're already part of that. And so it feels kind of like an easier vehicle to go forward with those things. But yeah, big have always been a very large horror fan, but I feel like there's so much versatility with it too. Like it can be like what Sammy said, it can be comedy, it can be fantasy, it can be sci-fi, all of these things. And I think that's really special too, the way it can really leak into all different sorts of genres. Because when I was growing up, I remember I had books and I was like, oh no, that was just like a fantasy book. And I read it back and I'm like, somebody is being disemboweled. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is a horror book. But you know, it kind of just leaks into all sorts of different things, which I find is really special about it.
I love that so much. As I feel like we all basically just grew up around a lot of horror media. It's kind of like the common thread here. So I guess for you guys as a writer, what horror media was very influential on your work, whether it be books, movies, even video games?
Y'all already know mine. It's not a secret.
But for the people who don't know, the very like the two people in the world who may
Yes,
not know.
the remaining two people who have never met me, never heard me talk ever. Hi, my name is Asia Monet. I'm obsessed with Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. And you know what? In the interest of keeping this a little bit actually insightful, I'll talk about something that's not Interview. Because I talk about Interview all the time. It's very queer. It's very insightful. The prose is very beautiful. And I think it's like really central to a lot of the themes I like to explore and a lot of the intersections I'm very interested in, especially the AMC adaptation, which also brings in being Black in America and these conversations about power, who has it, who doesn't, even conversations about gender and queerness. It tackles a lot that I'm really interested in, but switching slightly from that, very, very slightly, I love Jennifer's Body. Jennifer's Body is almost like the complete opposite. It's a little bit more like the Interview with the Vampire that has Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, and Kirsten Dunst, where it seems like nobody really wants to be there and everybody's trying to outact each other in the worst way. Jennifer's Body is like super campy. It's super femme. You've literally got, oh my God, I forget her last name. Wow, it's embarrassing. Fake fan. Anyway, you have Jennifer and she's going around killing boys specifically. Her and Needy have this very like homoerotic sapphic friendship. It's a cult favorite, obviously, but it was something that I watched when I was about 12, 13. And also, ironically, something me and my first girlfriend bonded over. I think it was our covert way of telling each other we were both gay. I was like, do you know Jennifer's Body? Do you like it? And she was like, I do. And then we started dating. But It's very influential to me on a creative level as well because it was very representative, I think, to see at the time as a young emerging queer writer. And I think having media like that is it's very empowering and it teaches you to honor your own voice and sort of like honor your own guidance. And I think to have it in something as like gory as Jennifer's body, where she's literally tearing apart men's flesh, is like there is no desire that is too ridiculous to put on the page in horror. And so that, along with Interview with the Vampire, I think was really sort of refreshing for me and really formative for me in trying to find my own voice and figuring out what parts of myself I wanted to see reflected on the page and how much of myself I could put out there, because it seemed like the answer was like whatever resonates with you creatively, you can feel free to try to explore. And so that was really, really nice.
I loved that. I expected someone else to speak. Also, the sun, I feel like I need to shift my camera here, but does anyone else want
But
to
it's
go?
giving though. The sun
Yeah, it is. I'm like, bro, like I'm like in the no, that's not much better. But anyway, Joel, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I can do. I think it's a good time for me to mention the podcast that I referenced in the first question. Oh wait, no, the very first question anyway. But lately I've been listening to the Magnus Archives, which is a kind of audio drama podcast following a archivist who's basically going through statements about paranormal events. And things get a little bit like weird and Lovecraftian. And I think that at the minute is probably one of the bigger influences of like what I'm currently working on, which we'll talk about later. But I think there's just something about this kind of like about hearing it, really, about like the audio storytelling that really enraptures me in like this kind of like state where you are just in utter suspense for the entire like 20 odd minutes that this goes on, and you don't know what's going to happen, but it's like standalone tales that like literally just keep going. And I don't know, I was really enjoying it. But I think another thing of like horror that I've really been enjoying, that has been quite influential, it literally just escaped my mind. Oh my god. um Oh, that's it, video games. The Resident Evil series has been so much fun to play. Like I really, and also like Alien Isolation. But I
Wait,
think
what Resi games are you playing? I have to know.
I started Village like a couple of
Oh,
weeks. I need to get back into it. But I love like the storytelling and the way it blends in the horror elements in that as well. Like I have really been like getting into that. And I think like video games as well as a medium literally have such like a fantastic way of conveying a different form of storytelling that like don't get to see in like other places, because you really get to interact with it much more than like other mediums. But yeah, that's kind of like where my brain's at in terms of like my current inspirations.
I love that you brought up video games because I feel like video games were very influential on me in my work. I was very obsessed with this game Outlast when I
Oh
was younger,
yes.
which is a survival horror game, and I love those so much because I feel like they just captured everything I loved about horror. Also, you know, The Last of Us, of course. But Lizelle, Sammy.
Yeah. No, I'm like the horror video games. I really love them, but I can't play them. I get too stressed out. So I watch walkthroughs and I'll just watch like somebody else play for like 50 hours. But for me, like, you know, shows when I was growing up, like Are You Afraid of the Dark, which was an anthology, like, you know, aimed at middle grade sort of show. But what I always remembered about that is there would be episodes and I would be thinking about it so long after I had watched it. Like I would still be scared because it wasn't really the kind of jump scare things. It was the psychological point of like, oh my gosh, could that happen to me? Like, could something like that happen? And I wouldn't know, or I would be trapped in this kind of cycle because they weren't always like happy endings to the stories either, which I really appreciated, especially as a kid, that it felt grown up because it was like I wasn't being fed this like picture perfect ending every time, which I really liked about it. And that really just made me kind of become obsessed with this idea of like having people scared way after they've already participated in like the book or the media or whatever. And then also shows like The Haunting of the Hill House, that was a huge influence for my book, Delicious Monsters, which is a haunted house story. But what I loved about it was really the family aspect. I loved the characters of it. I loved how much the horror blended in as a means to talk about their issues as a family and like their sibling dynamics and their dynamics with their parents, and even, you know, as they're older, how they go forward from that and like how they are living their lives. And part of it is what happened in the house, but it feels like a larger part is how they all dealt with what happened in the house together. And that always stuck with me. Like I'm always so interested in the ways in which like horror can reveal things about people and also kind of sit and stay with you.
I'm very similar when it comes to like horror games where I cannot play those. Like I'm dying in real life if, you know, something happens in a game. But when it comes to like influences, like I've written horror, like that's pretty much all I've written. And I would definitely say, you know, it was always like adult fantastical creature type horrors up until I started writing YA. And there are two very obvious influences of those. The YA being, I read every Fear Street book growing up. Like my great aunt and her daughter, who went off to college, had a huge bookcase that just had all of them. And I would go to her house whenever we visited, and I would hold myself up in my cousin's room and read all of her books. And to this day, I like still like vaguely remember, you know, some of the plots. Like, oh, that happened in Secret Admirer. I know that, you know, but you know, that was like such a huge influence on the way that I thought about horror books, in the sense of, you know, what worked for me and what didn't work for me when I was reading them. Because it's like 50 to 100 of them. So like, you know, you're not going to love all of them. You're going to be like, oh, that one was whack, you know. And thinking about like the moments that I still remember, you know, like there was this one time this guy put his hand in the garbage disposal. I was changed. I was reversed as a person. There's no going back to me before that moment. And that really informed like kind of what I felt was worth committing to and what wasn't. And also kind of informed me loving scares and like set pieces and things like that. Like I love deaths. I love kills in books, movies, all of that stuff. You know, I'm the kind of person that watches a movie and I say, no plot, but really great kills. You know, like I love them. And that's what Fear Street taught me. But the second influence, and if anyone here is watching with a connection to these films, please hire me for anything. I'll do anything. Pitch Black, starring Vin Diesel, released in the year 1999 to 2000, differing sources. It is singularly my favorite creature feature film of all time. You know, if we can sit down, we can just start quoting the movie at each other, because my mom, of course, is who got me into this movie. And there's just something about following a real team of bad people. Like all of the main characters are bad. Every minor character is a good person that's been screwed over by the bad people. Like there's nothing good about the situation. And then you add monsters. And I feel like every book I've ever written is just pitch black in different environments. Here's boarding school pitch black. Here's forest pitch black. You know, like that movie has influenced me so much because it's just so campy and not afraid to be really wild, like really dumb. Like I think that that's another thing that I feel like I enjoy horror movies that aren't afraid to be dumb, even if it's the most highbrow of all movies. Like just a little bit of badness is what really makes horror. Like if you don't take that leap, I don't feel like you enjoy what you're doing. Like I feel like you're scared to take a risk if you don't take that leap of, oh, that was a choice. And I feel like Pitch Black really did that for me. Like everything was a choice. Everything was, just them trying to pitch us these characters that were supposed to be our leads, but were really not good people. So that definitely is like the two main influences of inspirations of me as a horror writer.
I'm so happy that you brought up Pitch Black because I love that movie so much.
I was literally going to say that my mom used to be in love with Vin Diesel. And that was like what the Riddick Chronicles or whatever. Where
I love that movie too.
And I was like, "What is with you and this bald man?" Let me tell you,
is your mom my
has a certain appeal. If you know.
Especially in those movies. Like I feel like, especially in the Riddick movies, he's.
Well, he plays this world-weary man in a sci-fi movie. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
He doesn't get old.
His best friend is a man who he met while he was on a abandoned planet. Like that's so.
That's a little. You got a little that you met on an event.
I wish.
Where y'all watch it?
I wish that that they really do try to double down on there's no such thing as gay in those movies. I'll tell you that.
That's fine because it only emboldens me. I get more and more determined to find the queerness.
I like your interpretation, and if there's ever a universe, give me money. I will write it. I will write that interpretation.
I would love to see it.
Because look, I love that movie. I love the characters. Like I said, I think there should be queerness in it. Actually, there should be way more queerness than there is because this is year 70 billion and 20, and Vin Diesel just he seems like. He makes good sexual tension with everybody who's on screen with him. Like even the Fast and the Furious movies are just like filled with sexual tension, and it's like played off as like super straight dudes being super straight. But like if you watch that movie and you don't want him and The Rock to kiss, you're watching it wrong.
So what movie are they on now for the Fast and the Furious? Didn't
24.
They go to the moon recently? Right, that happened, right?
I think it's post 10. I think 10 was the most recent release.
I feel like it's got to be 30 at least.
But okay, brings me to my next question, which is, was there anything in particular that you guys were consuming while you were working on your short story that you found influential or helpful?
You're really taking me back to 2 years ago. Gotta love publishing.
I know it's been so long.
For anyone in the audience who doesn't know, books take a long time to come out. they take a while to sort of process.
I think for me in particular, I was consuming 2 things, if I remember correctly. I think the first thing was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, because it's partially what my story is based off of. So I was like combing through Frankenstein, just like, hello, what can I like gather from you? And the second one was a game. It was Dead by Daylight, which is basically a video game where you work with other players to repair generators whilst you're being chased by a famous serial killer. And if you get caught, you're sacrificed to an entity. I think it was just like the tension of that really got me into the brain of this story and just like about these two characters that are kind of like hunting one another. So
Also, do you want to go ahead and do a quick pitch as well?
oh yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to add that, but if you that way the audience has a little idea of what's going on in your story.
True. So my story is called I Love Your Eyes, and it's about two lovers, Frey and Adam, who go to a manor house in North Wales to celebrate their anniversary. However, they're both keeping secrets from one another that may end a relationship or a lot more. So writing this story was very much about these two characters and like their kind of keeping an eye on one another throughout the story whilst also trying to like have this anniversary. And I think Dead by Daylight really helped with kind of keeping the tension and the eeriness of everything. And rereading Frankenstein, I can't really go into why because of spoilers, but it was a great kind of source of inspiration for the story.
What about Asia, Sammy, Lizelle?
I don't know that I cannot conceptualize what I was doing at that time.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Oh, let me pitch first. Sorry. Yeah, so my story is called All My Best Friends Are Dead, and it's about a group of girls that have had a sleepover and something happened at it, but none of them can remember. And so they decide that the solution to this is to have another sleepover and see if that can jog their memory. And the main character is a girl that's new to their friend group, and she's very invested in wanting to prove to them that she belongs with them. And so I feel like for me, I was mostly kind of pulling on things that I was thinking about or that kind of served as sort of inspirations for the story. So particularly, there is a lore in the story. There is an urban legend about Brenda Butterfingers, who, if you say her name in the mirror, she will appear and things will not go well for you. And so, obviously, it's very Candyman. It's very Bloody Mary. And so, I was kind of thinking about, the kind of power of those sorts of lore stories, and also thinking about like building that up and kind of because with that lore, I think especially, something like Candyman, there is the story people tell as the urban legend, and there's the real story, and kind of deciding how those would differ or change, and kind of how I wanted that to come across. And then also how I wanted the characters to interact with that, because I also didn't want them to just be like doing the regular mirror thing. They of course have to do something special. I have to put my own twist on it. And so it was mostly kind of that kind of referential thinking of like, okay, like I've interacted with these bits of media and pieces of this before, and like what do I want to do with that, and how do I want to spin it? And same with like a sleepover story. Like I feel like that's a very common like horror fun set piece, and it was kind of like, okay, how do I put my own sort of bit on that? And so it was a lot of thinking about that.
Yeah, I definitely felt that in your story. I remember just being so obsessed with how campy it was, and I definitely got the Candyman vibes, the Bloody Mary vibes. And initially, it didn't have a title, and so when Lizelle sent me the title "All My Best Friends Are Dead," I was like, yes, it's perfect. I feel like this just encapsulates the vibe of this story. So yeah, I love that.
It was very much that. It was previously called The Sleepover. It was very bad. I didn't expect to use it. I just needed a placeholder.
Asia or Sammy, what about you guys?
Yeah, I can go next. I was buying time. I was cheating. I was looking at my Goodreads to see what I was reading. Back at the end of 2021 when I read this. So I know two major things, one from my cheating and then one from my actual brain and my memory. And it's that Midnight Mass let me do my pitch. So my story is called Be Not Afraid, and it follows a strange girl who wanders into a church, and she has the ability to heal. And the priest who runs this church recognizes an opportunity in keeping this girl captive in his church. And things obviously get worse from there. And so a big inspiration for me was, first of all, my own history. So I am a Catholic schoolgirl survivor. I was in Catholic school from K through 12. And let me tell you, it does something to you. Um, and a lot of my relationship with religion and the church is really fraught and really complicated, which like I think a lot of people's relationship with religion and especially the Catholic Church really is. And so I wanted a story where I could sort of put on display some of my more critical observations of different sort of selfishness energy that I had recognized in my time in the church, and exploitation, and about how the church is not exempt from things like racism, anti-Blackness, homophobia, etc., and exploitation especially. And so Midnight Mass played into that really well when it came out. It was really like a great sort of inspiration for these feelings and thoughts I was having. And it gave me a lot of inspiration for the concept of church, specifically a Catholic Christian church, as a site for horror. At the time, I was also reading a lot of literary fiction. And so that played a huge role in the sort of voice that I wanted to write about. Something for me when I'm writing YA especially is that I don't try to change my voice very significantly from how I write adult, because I do believe that I was a pretentious teen, and I feel like there are very many pretentious teens out there. And so I write for those little pretentious teens who are like, oh, I love like a super poetic, like really esoteric book. And I'm like, yeah, I write for you guys. So I wanted to incorporate those sort of like litfic leanings into like this really short, bite-sized, creepy, sort of religiously charged piece. Yeah, and I'm glad I remembered I was reading litfic by cheating. So thank you, Joel and Lizelle, for going first. So I had time to read my Goodreads.
I too cheated. And the whole time I was Googling 2021 releases and trying to remember exactly what was going on. And I saw Midnight Mass, and when you had said that came out, I was like, oh, I actually do see that.
I did Google it. I Googled it to make sure you was right.
And also I gave up too, because I truly nothing jogged my memory. But I do distinctly remember thinking, actually, let me back up and pitch the story, which is a young girl who babysits on the side, plans to go to college, and on the side of her babysitting, she sells the baby teeth of the children that she watches to her hoodoo auntie. So a lot of this comes from, so what I did remember, but I don't remember what I was watching to trigger the thought, is that I wanted to write about like broke, like when you like real broke and you like, look, I'm 2 seconds away from selling ass. I really just don't know what to do. I need like to change careers or something. And I wanted to write about like how determined you become in like a twisted kind of way. Like when you're really, really poor, like you're like, I don't want to deal with this no more. Like there's like this twisted switch that comes on you. Like, look, the next opportunity, I'm going for it. And it don't matter if it's legal or not. And so I wanted to write about that mindset and kind of have fun with, my whole family is from South Carolina. We're all very beachy people, lots of, don't let people touch your hair. They might put a spell on you, that type of stuff. And I just wanted to write about it in like a lighthearted way. I really like writing about like hoodoo and voodoo in lighthearted ways, because it's not always, American Horror Story Coven. A lot of the time it's your aunt telling you not to do something. You're like, why? And they're like, 'cause magic. And you're like, whoa, like that's a leap. So those were the two real things that I wanted to, I guess, address. And also, teeth is creepy, you know, is why that's weird, you know, and especially the fact that babies have teeth. They why do you have separate teeth, you know? So that's essentially the thought process.
I love the teeth. And I noticed that there were so many teeth themes that come up in people's stories. Teeth comes up in Ryan Douglas's story. Teeth comes
Nobody
up
likes
in
them.
Danye Cole's story. So I'm like, this is just a teeth book, and I love that.
Oh, actually, I just remembered. All of the college stuff in my book is inspired by my job.
Oh yeah, you were talking about that before.
Yeah. So like I work in college prep, and I just was like, oh, this is a good opportunity to just like look like I'm working. So that was another huge thing. And my job is like videos. So like we like actually do like film content and stuff about college
Oh
prep.
wow.
Yeah. So that too.
Yeah, that's probably like a lot of like busy work you gotta do.
Yeah. Yes.
But that's now I'm curious about like, because obviously, you know, I was there with you guys for the edits and the revisions, but I'm curious about like where the story began for you and like what was it like what was the process of drafting it for the first time?
I can start. So I originally was going to do a completely different story. Um, so I had just like a weird dream, and I was like, I'm gonna roll with it. And so it always had a sleepover, but they were like gonna team up, and they were gonna run off and fight a monster and stuff. And then I was like, I don't think I want to do that. It's like I think I want to do something about a group of girls. And so I was like, I'm gonna keep the sleepover, and I'm going to do something different with it. And I started with a bunch of bits and pieces. So that bit and piece about the Brenda Butterfingers and like figuring out that lore, and then okay, how is that gonna go into the sleepover? And so I usually do a lot of piecing together because I'm very much a plot heavy person. Even for short stories, I have to do it. I'm just in that mode now. And so I gather all my bits and pieces, and then I start to think about the character and like how they're going to fit into the story. And so that's when I thought about this character of a newer girl coming into a friend group and like trying to insert herself. And what is that like when you're entering a new group and you so want to be part of it, but you're also kind of aware that you can't be part of it the same way they are because they have all of this history and all this time that comes before, and like what is that like, and what would how would that change your interactions with people, and how would that make things different. And so that's a big part of the story, is that they don't remember what happened, but she feels still somehow like she's on the outside. And so it was really kind of thinking about the beats of that story in like, okay, so what is her journey going to be. And then honestly, just kind of thinking of what could happen that would be really bonkers. I feel like that's the way I go with horror, is I'm like, okay, now what would really mess people up to read? And like what would be really shocking and what could be really gory and upsetting? And like, okay, how am I gonna fit that together? And so I did a lot of plotting things before I even wrote anything. And so when I went to the drafting process, it was really kind of just going through it, but I also then made it complicated for myself because I was like, what if I had two timelines? And so now I have two timelines, which I liked because I liked the idea of it mirroring each other. So you have the timeline of the sleepover they're having now to kind of figure out what happened, and also the sleepover that they had in the past where something went wrong, and you're bouncing between those and you're seeing the different interactions of that girl kind of when she felt like she was becoming part of the group, and now when things have gone wrong and she kind of feels like they're pushing her out. And so that was also a process of figuring out the best way to have them complement each other without repeating, and like having readers feel like, oh my god, I'm just seeing the exact same thing. So yeah, a lot of that throughout the process.
I think for me, I was very similar to Lazelle in the fact that I had a different story originally that I wanted to do. I wanted to do like a sci-fi horror initially, and I think it's something I will return to. And it was about like a parasitic alien aboard a spaceship. And the crew member was like the only black crew member, and they immediately were the ones that were everyone was suspicious of. But I think around the time, which is weird that I'm only thinking of it now, I was really into like Netflix's You, and I was kind of thinking about like this couple that like something's off and something's like their relationship's on the rocks, but why? And like why is it that this like relationship is like so perfect yet so like unhinged at the same time? And I think that's where kind of like Frey and Adam first came into my brain. Plus there was like music I was listening to at the time where I was like, oh, what if there's someone who like did something with like body parts? And so I think the process of it was very much kind of like I needed to have the plot kind of figured out. And I kind of do this a lot where I just kind of like gestate on a story for a bit. So like I keep thinking about it and like developing it in my brain before I actually commit it to like paper or like a Notion page. And it was very much like a furious like scribble of like, okay, I need this to happen, then this to happen, then this to happen. And it was very much trying to kind of establish the relationship between Frey and Adam and hopefully kind of convey it as like two people who love each other, but also as a relationship that is in jeopardy at the same time. And I think like it's kind of hard to do that way in such like a short amount of pages. But also trying to kind of have this kind of lurking underneath the surface of something unsettling going on. And I think it was very much kind of the initial draft where I was like, I just need to get this down and like get everything that I want to happen on the page. And I think one of my very favorite parts of the story is the last kind of like confrontation between Frey and Adam. And I think the last line of the short story, which hasn't changed since the very first draft, I think is very much like one of my favorite bits from the entire drafting process. So yeah, that was kind of like my little like thing.
You know what? I forgot that you had initially pitched me the sci-fi one. I completely forgot. I was like, oh yeah, you pitched me something that comped to Among Us. Like
Yes,
at first.
it was like Alien Isolation meets Among Us. And it was
Yeah. Oh
like
my gosh. Yeah. You should still write that. I still want to see it.
I think I will. Maybe it'll be like a novella someday because I definitely think
Yeah.
it deserves like a bit longer than a short story.
Agreed. What about you guys? Asia.
I can go next only because I want to mention that there was a part where Joel said, I think he said, I love when people do things with body parts. And I just want to be like, you know, I too love when people do things with body parts. But no, for me, I remember, so I feel like Be Not Afraid is really, really short. I don't know if it's the shortest story in the anthology series. Maybe it isn't. It is? Oh, okay. So Be Not Afraid is oh, maybe not. You're muted. Wait, you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah, it is the shortest. I believe it's only the final word count was like 2K.
Yeah, it's very short. And the reason why is because I had just finished a novel that was like 600 pages long, if not over 600 pages. And I was querying with that. I think I just signed with my agent. And then I was working on the short story and I was like, I want it to be short. Like, I need this to actually be short. I had also, I think I had just graduated from undergrad at the time. So again, my brain was leaking out of my ears. I think I am constantly in academia and my brain is constantly leaking out of my ears. But I think at that point I was like, I need like something short, sweet, but still impactful. And it was a fun sort of challenge for myself because I think I tend to run really long. to see, okay, like, can I write a spooky, impactful story that still has depth, that is extremely short, only has 3 major characters, very few lines of dialogue, and can I still build up the atmosphere of being in both the beauty, splendor, and horror of a Catholic church? Can I still imply that there's something not quite right about our main character? And can I still establish the fact that this priest is doing things in the name of God that are actually in the name of himself? Um, and so it was really fun to sit down and figure out a voice that was dropping clues, but at times also very distant. I intentionally didn't make it a narrative voice that was really emotional, because I wanted the horror to kind of come from the almost bland, flat way I am telling you about these very horrific things that are happening, and sort of juxtapose it with like this very purple prose describing the beauty of the church, and at the same time describing the sort of big scene that happens at the end of the short story. Um, and so I just remember sitting down and being like, can I do all the stuff I usually do in 600 pages in like less than 6 pages? And the audience can tell me whether or not I managed to accomplish that. But I will say that I was very, very proud of what I ended up with. And I had a really good time writing it. But it was definitely me trying to see if I could actually write something concise for once in my life.
Yeah, well, I'm biased, but I think you did an awesome job. It was perfect, in my opinion. What about you, Sammy?
I'm so disgusted with myself hearing 2,000 words. I told Tercy, I was like, how trifling am I that I wrote a 10,000 word story? It's okay if,
If it makes you feel better, you're not the only one. Donye's was very long too. You guys had the chunky stories in the collection, and I love that.
I'm not gonna lie, I counted the pages of everybody's stories. I was like, all right, let's see how bad of a person I was compared to everybody else. But
you're not alone. I turned it to the side so I could see how big the chunks were.
Thank you. I didn't really so when I first was like, oh, what do I write? I pitched 2 different ideas. They were very half-assed. It was like, one's about language and another about a girl who steals teeth. And you were like, do the teeth one. I was like, sure. And I basically, started reading a lot of short stories at that point so that I could at least not be bad, like so bad that they're like, this person's never read a short story in their lives. And I wanted to, like I said, capture the feeling of being poor and capture, hoodoo and superstition. But I also really wanted to challenge myself to, I guess, not necessarily reveal the monster. So I reveal monsters a lot because, like I said, I love creature features. And I do show the monster, but one of the things that, since I write about a culture that not a lot of people know a lot about, I tend to be like, actually, it turned out that the monster was this. In the Southern culture, these are typically, I typically do like an encyclopedia entry about everything that's happening. And I wanted to challenge myself to write something that wasn't like that. And I also, wanted to challenge myself to be short and be, not long-winded. And surprisingly, that is what happened. I'm not a long-winded author. It's more so that I will write a 7,000 word story and then revise it, and all of a sudden it's 100,000 words. So I really try to, stick to the story. And I'd say one of the biggest challenges for me when I was writing this story was the revisions. Like when we actually got to revising it, because like I said, I wasn't really a short story writer at that point. So like things that, needed to be taken out, things that needs to be put in. Like I had no frame of reference. I had no clue what you guys were telling me to do, what I was doing wrong, what I was doing right. I didn't know at all. I was like I have this thing where I ask a bunch of questions and it sounds like I'm disagreeing with people, but it's really like, no, I actually just want you to explain to me, like I'm 5, what's happening. And a lot of that was the process of revising the story, not just with y'all, but with readers as well. So my writing process was basically research, be told what to do, try my best to do what they said, and fail sometimes, but also succeed sometimes.
Yeah, well, you know what? In my opinion, I think it's better to ask too many questions than too little.
True.
When it comes to revisions, so then there's no miscommunication between you and editors, copy editors, etc. But I forgot what my next question was. Oh yeah. So I really loved having some insight into your guys' like process drafting, and I'm curious, like, is there something that you find that you're exploring in all of your works? Is there any themes that you find yourself returning to?
I'm gonna hop in because this seems to pop up in every novel, but not in this short story. But generational trauma seems to be my thing. Never mean to, but always comes through in the stories, which I think is something where, like, when I went into this story, I was like, I'm doing a friendship story. This isn't going to be about family, not this time. But that usually does come up. And I think just because I also write a lot of stories about several generations, and I usually get parents very involved in the story. And so it just kind of ends up coming out that way. But that tends to be something that I notice kind of pops up continuously in my novels, certainly in the first 4, probably into the 5th also, because also involves a lot of families, and it just kind of it works out that way. And it's something that I kind of never tire of discussing in different ways because there's so many different ways to discuss it. So yeah, that is something that pops up a lot in my work, but not in this short story because I very purposely tried not to.
Yeah, I feel like there's endless things you can do with family, with the family, with the house. Like, I mean, so many different ways that families are haunted. What about you guys? Joel, Asia, Sammy?
I think in a very similar way, like family is something that I write about, whether it's like a found family, chosen family, or like family is like motivation for like things that happen. Like your family motivates you for certain reasons. I think that something that as I'm going into different projects that I am keep being drawn back to is the relationship between power and knowledge, and kind of like how you can use knowledge, how you can like kind of conceal what knowledge you have in order to like use it for your own gain. Also the power you can have over who gets to know things, the power you have in terms of like the access to knowledge that you have. I find it so interesting, especially coming from like an academic background, how academia, specifically as like people of color, we are often kind of restricted in terms of like what we can learn, what we can have access to, the places we can have access to. And although I don't explore it much in this story, I think like the academic background for Frey was very important to me to like kind of establish in this story and show like how they use their academics in the situations that they're placed in. But going into like the projects that I'm currently doing, it's kind of like I really wanted to display kind of how, although they may not have power in other areas, their knowledge and the knowledge that they gain is the like can give them power to do things that other people can't do because their experiences and their kind of influences have really given them a fresher perspective instead of repeating history and reinventing the same exact wheel again and again. So yeah, that's kind of like the big thing that comes up in a lot of my stories.
That was such an academic answer. So academic of you. I love that. Asia, Sammy.
I love a creature, I've realized. I was sitting here thinking, and I was like, what is something I often return to? And there is always a person who's not just a person. There's almost, and how I'm playing with that, I think depends on the nature of the book itself. Sometimes that's the entire point, and I just have a whole cast of people who are some sort of weird thing. Sometimes it's vampires, sometimes it's weird angel like creatures, like in my short story. But there's always something that's like not quite human. And I think I go back to it because one, I'm a monster fucker. And I think that that's kind of hot, just having a character in there who's just a monster. But also, two, I think it's really fun to use as an allegory for marginalized identities. I was just watching a film that sort of talked about how there's a very deep history, especially in horror, of using monsters or humanoid monsters, especially as an allegory for different sort of marginalizations. And I think that is something that just really deeply resonates with me, both kind of like Joel as an academic, but also, again, as a monster fucker. I love having this intersection where I can pretend that I'm being really insightful and really smart, but also I just think vampires are hot. So I return it again and again to like this idea of exploring sort of the humanity within supernatural creatures or just inventative creatures. Um, yeah, I love a creature. I love a monster. I love a weird little thing.
I support this message 1,000%. Sammy, what about you?
I feel like I definitely return to, I guess, poor culture a lot. Like, not just with this short story, but I typically like the different types of mindsets that come with not having money or needing to make ends meet, or, coming into a lot of money suddenly, and, decision making when you don't have money, like, should I do this or should I do that? Because if I do this, it's like $3 more, but, I'll get more money later. Like, I continuously return to stories like that, but I also talk a lot about consuming, like the idea of, not just like eating food, but like people, and, herbs, all sorts of things. Like the idea that what you put in your body affects so much more than just your health. And I come back to that a lot. And I don't know what that says about me, but, it happens a lot.
Yeah, I think I find that, yeah, I love that you explore that a lot in your work, because I do think that when you grow up that way, not having a lot, I mean, you carry that with you, into adulthood. It's there's a lack of ease in your decision making when it comes to anything financial related. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So a fun question now. If you had to pick a theme song for your story, what would it be? I know it's probably hard to pick one, but if you had to pick one.
Can I just quickly answer? Because
Yes,
mine
go
is
ahead.
actually very obvious, which is The Freaks Come Out at Night,
Yeah.
which is literally what my story is titled. I just said the teeth come out at night. And I always say I appreciate that I wasn't made to change it, because that's an unserious title. And, you get what you get.
Well, but the thing is though, your story has so much like comedic elements that for me, it felt like the perfect title. What about you guys?
I was gonna say somebody else go. I'm cheating again.
Yeah.
Okay, I can get
Asia pulling up the Spotify as we speak.
For me, I would say I've Never felt so alone by Labyrinth, which to me is very like reminiscent of the main character. There's also a line that's like, I thought we were friends. I wish I knew better then. And I was like, yep, that's it. That's the one that speaks to the whole story. Yeah, so that's the one I'd say.
Hell yeah. You're so deep in thought right now.
I think for me, like, there are two songs that I kept listening to whilst drafting this short story. One was Frankenstein by Rina Sawayama, where like in the chorus she's just like, I can be your Frankenstein, and I think it was quite interesting because of who the monster actually is in the story. Like, who, like, is it one thing or is it Frey? I think that was quite interesting to explore. And then the other one I was listening to was Serial Killer by Slater. Because there's a line where in the song she's like, why is the kitchen missing all the sharpest knives? And I was just like, oh, I like that. That's very fun. And it's just like the little clues and stuff that really like hints to kind of like the unsettling nature of like, do you actually know who your partner is, or is it like, is there something else going on here?
Oh, that's so perfect for your story. I love that. Asia, did you find one?
I didn't find the song I was looking for. I think it probably got deleted off of Spotify or something. But it's okay because music is built into my story because it's set in a church. So honestly, my first thought was going to be like, go listen to some Ave Maria or anything with a really orchestral sort of choir in the background. But I don't think I'm going to say that. I think I'm going to say specifically anything by Ethel Cain. I think that she deals a lot with sort of this like religious tone, but in the most cynical sort of way. And she plays a lot with religious themes often, but also themes that I think tie in very well to the story energetically. I think a lot about, there's a certain song that I'm going to look up because I'm horrid at remembering the names of things, especially songs. Family Tree Intro by Ethel Cain. If I had to pick a specific song, I think it would be that one.
That is such a vibe. I love that. Okay, so let's talk about works in progress now. Like, what's next for you guys? What are you working on? Anyone who wants to go first?
Okay, I can go first. I am currently working on what I've been calling online a sapphic creature feature. It's an adult novel. It is going to follow it's the best way I can explain it is Twilight meets Jennifer's Body, but set in summer, and it's a thriller. These two girls meet, they hit it off, they're having a great vacation, and then the main character realizes that the murders that have been going on in this little town have been caused by her brand new little situationship girlfriend. And she has to figure out what she's going to do about that. So there's a lot of sort of fatal attraction style push and pull. It's very queer, it's very beachy, it's very summery, it's very bloody, it's very gory. It's all the things that I love just kind of thrown into one big little ball. And of course there's creatures, again, because I love creatures. I won't reveal what the creature is now, but there are creatures. It's me. There's going to be weird creatures. And she is sleeping with the creature. So again, there is monster fucking.
I love that. Yay for all the creatures. Put all the creatures in fiction, please. What about you guys?
I am currently working on a short story that is about a witch who is trying to save a bunch of girls who have been, I guess, infected with magic. So she approaches her local congressman about how to fix this, and he blows her off. Thus begins her systemic plans to kill this man.
Sammy!
That was like the last thing I was going you to say. She just went for the most extreme solution, but I'm here for it.
I'm obsessed with this girl who goes to her local congressman.
Die!
She said, I am a tax paying.
I have rights.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm obsessed with this. Oh my god.
I guess I could go next.
Yeah.
So I currently have like a main project and then I have a side hoe. So I am currently working on a adult gothic dark academia called Watch Us Bend, Watch Us Break, or WUB as so lovingly called. It basically follows 4 students who enroll into a Welsh university and research the dying of magic. And whilst doing so, they inadvertently summon a vengeful ghost that uncovers a conspiracy deeply rooted within their institution that undoes everything they know about magic, themselves, and basically everything they've ever known. There is a creature. I won't tell what kind of creature it is, but if you're a fan of like H.P. Lovecraft, it's kind of like down that route. It This story has been a labor of love since around the same time as actually I started work on my short story. It was like 2021 where this like idea first came about. And it's been a lot of fun to like write, and especially writing the short story, I was able to embrace more of like the horror aspects and truly like develop the plot so much more. My side hoe is a work in progress called Covenant, and all I can really say about it right now is that it's a vampire epic, following a vampire through many centuries. And it's fun, it's queer, it's sexy, and I know Asia for one is like really excited for it. And I'm just excited to like continue writing that once I'm done with Wub. So yeah.
Yeah, so my current work in progress, I'm working on an adult thriller, which is essentially about a couple that go to a retreat to try and fix their relationship, only to kind of realize that something is very wrong with that particular retreat, which I won't get too much into right now. And then I guess what's next, I have this guy coming out next year, Tender Beast, which is my next young adult psychological thriller slash horror about a wealthy Black family. They own a needs-based private school in Toronto, and their matriarch has recently died in an accident, and their brother has just gotten out on bail. He has been charged with the murder of his girlfriend. But because he is a minor, they're able to put a press hold on it. And so nobody knows. So he's able to go back into the school. But then a boy shows up dead, and suddenly kind of all fingers point to him, but he insists that he didn't do it. And we have our main character, Sunny, who is his sister. And she's really invested in trying to protect their family legacy and protect what their mom wanted protected before she died. And so she's not sure that she believes her brother, but she's willing to team up with him to figure out who the real murderer is, in order to basically save the day and save their school.
That sounds so good. I saw the cover for that. That cover slaps. I love the
They did a
yeah.
very, very good job with this
Yeah.
one. It's funny, this is the cover I got to be most involved in, because I was like, I want to be involved with the cover. And then they were like, what do you want? And I was like, what do you think would be good? And I was completely unhelpful in the entire process. I'm sure, once again, making them regret letting authors be involved. But it came out beautiful, and I'm really, really happy with it. So yeah, there's the mirroring. There's a brother. There's a sister.
I'm so excited. Also, the adult thriller, is that one coming out with anyone yet? Is that
No, that's just me plugging away on it.
Okay, because yeah, that
Just
sounded
got
really
my
good.
beta reader feedback,
I need
and
it.
we'll see what happens from there. But yeah, I hope so. I mean, this is my 4th attempt at adult thriller, and I think this one is the strongest. So we'll see.
Hell yeah. So Joel, should we take some questions
Hello.
from the audience?
Yes, if everyone wants to like in the comments, leave any questions that you want us to answer. I'll probably pick some to just like throw up on the screen when they start coming through. But this has been so nice. Thank you so much, Stacey, for like hosting kind of like this discussion. It's been a lot of fun to like hear everyone else's kind of like writing processes and like what they're currently working on. It's been really great.
Yeah, because I'm super huge fan of all of you guys. So it's nice to get to like finally pick your brains about like all the things, you know, that I've been wondering about like in the process that we've been working together. While they're putting in questions, should we start the game?
Ooh, we could do.
You want to do that?
Yeah, I think we can.
All rolling.
That's such a horror movie line.
Should we start?
I have a game planned.
Shall we start the game?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
So I thought we play a game of this or that, but it's a horror edition that I concocted. And for those who don't know the rules, you have to pick one option. You cannot pick both. One. So first up, cosmic horror or gothic horror?
Gothic.
Cosmic.
And Joel is frozen.
I'm literally writing a story that has both.
I know.
Oh god. Oh god. Okay. I'm gonna go with gothic horror.
Wow.
Sorry, I feel like
everybody's chosen to make me the minority. I see.
You know what? I think I'm gonna go with Sammy on this one, just because I don't know. There's
So
something
Sammy won't be alone.
Unknowable terror for me. You know. Okay. Creepy doll or creepy child?
Creepy child.
Creepy doll.
Okay. So context. In what context are
horror trope?
Which do I prefer to watch in movies?
Yeah, movies, books.
Creepy
whatever.
child, 100%. Okay. If I was dealing with it, that's different.
What about
you?
Creepy
child.
Creepy doll, but I think I assumed this was if I was dealing with it because I was like, I could kill the doll. But
the doll is killable.
I don't know. I could do it.
I draw the line at child.
I know it's kind of hard to see a dog being all that formidable. I mean, unless it was like Chucky, then I don't know. Maybe he'd have a shot. Okay, slasher movies or possession movies?
Ooh, slashers.
Slasher.
It's crazy y'all answered that so easily. I've
never been a possession movie girl.
I love possession movies.
Oh, to be fair, I do have I have a novella idea about possession. But I still think slasher.
I know there's something about your body being colonized by an unknown force that is very terrifying.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Good.
I'm gonna go with slasher because that's technically what Pitch Black is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go the possession. I'm gonna take the possession. It's just I too much like the edge of like, are you faking it? Like, are you like are you actually doing it or are you not doing it? I like it too much.
Yeah.
Also the exorcisms. I like the whole package.
Yeah, I mean the complete personality change is jarring.
Yeah.
Okay, vampires or werewolves?
Vampires.
Werewolves.
Oh, you know mine.
Yeah, I mean your answer is a given, but for the people who don't know.
What if I said werewolves? What if I just
I would immediately be like, Asia's the imposter.
Okay. Cults or haunted house?
Haunted house. Oh,
I gotta go haunted house.
Cult.
I'm also gonna go cult.
There's something about collective hive minds that I find so intriguing.
Yeah. I mean, the easy way that you might be able to be
Yeah.
brought in.
Inducted into a cult.
Yeah.
I think haunted house for me because like that's where you sleep. That's where you
Yeah.
lay your head.
I know, it's literally your house.
That's where you're supposed to be. That's the safest like idea of a place. You know, you'd be like, where are you gonna be safe? Home. And it's not. That's crazy.
It's true.
Yeah, I think I would choose the haunted house.
And you put money down.
It's claustrophobia. Okay. Deep sea horror or deep space horror?
Oh my gosh. Can I
Deep
refuse?
space.
I know you said we're not allowed to refuse, but I would like to refuse.
Yeah, no. That's against the rules.
Deep space, and I'm gonna like the is it Dead Space, the video game where it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I was playing that. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that scares me. So yeah, I think deep space for me.
I think I would also say deep space, just because I just rewatched Alien yesterday, and I was like, damn, how terrifying to be caught in the middle of in a spaceship in the middle of nowhere.
True. Speaking of Alien, if anyone in the audience is in New York and is coming to the Books of Magic event on the 30th of October, a certain someone will be dressed in a Ripley costume. So come along.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
It's very great.
Oh, what about you guys? Did you guys answer?
I was gonna say probably deep sea.
Deep sea, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Asia. Deep sea. The space, I was like, I don't see myself being there or having anything to do with that. But the sea, I was like, you might have to go there.
Well, yeah, I think there's something even more terrifying about it because it's right there.
Yes.
In our world.
You don't even need to make a creature. You can just pick one of the ones already down there.
Because it's so close.
Yeah.
So something like it's on the same planet as us. You just don't know.
Yeah, and we haven't even fully explored the depths of the sea. There's so much
it's just been there the whole time. We have no idea.
Yeah.
What is it? We don't know, but it's down there. Chilling.
I choose deep space. I choose deep space.
Deep space, okay.
Pitch black rules.
We are kin. We are kin. Okay. Creepy asylum or creepy cabin?
Asylum.
Yeah.
I feel like asylum you get to, because I think a lot about Outlast. And so I'm like, you get so many characters in a creepy asylum. So I kind of love that.
I know the weird kooky kind of characters, yes.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna say cabin purely because I think the silence of like a cabin in the middle of nowhere, and it's only you and however many other people are there. I think that kind of like unsettling feeling of just like not knowing what's out there is very intriguing to me.
Oh, yeah. What about you?
I think I'm gonna do creepy asylum.
Yeah, creepy asylum. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I know there's too many things to know about what they do there.
Yeah. That's the real terrifying part. Okay. Cannibals or ghosts?
Cannibals.
Ooh.
I'm sorry, I made these hard on purpose.
All of these questions, I'm like, whoa.
I've read too many books about cannibals at this point to be like.
I do got a soft spot for cannibals. I also choose cannibals.
Like, even though my story has a ghost, I'm sorry, but like, cannibals.
Okay, I choose cannibals as well because there's nothing better than reading something that's horror or watching it and it's about cannibalism and you didn't know it was going to be about cannibalism.
Yes.
I think that's like such a fun turn in a book or a movie or whatever. Like, you didn't know they was about to be doing that, but then all of a sudden they are, and you're like, whoa, this is next level.
Lizelle, Asia.
It's like I have to choose cannibals. It's like every zombie show I think of, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, are they secret cannibals? Are they
Yes, zombie shows do it so much where you like find that safe family and you're like, oh, they're so nice. And then you find out they're I've eaten
Yeah.
you. Oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
it.
It brings you back to the like Telltale game.
Oh yes.
And it's like, I was like, they're cannibals. I was like, I know it. We got to get out of here. The one game I can play because it's like choose your adventure and I can just poke things.
Yeah, I think I'm also probably gonna have to go with cannibals, only because like I love the concept of cannibals, but it's also because ghosts, I don't find them scary or interesting anymore. A ghost story doesn't get me. It's a controversial opinion, but
There are so many ghosts that are offended right now.
Damn.
like I say this and then watch my apartment become haunted because they heard me. Oh, you're not afraid? You're not afraid? That you will be. I'll have to update my opinion. But for now,
This is
I'm
a cannibal
afraid
household. Okay. Satanic goat or fucked up deer?
Deer. I love deer.
Dear.
Deer.
I have to do the goat. I have to stay loyal to Black
I
Adam.
I think the goat. Yeah, there's just some. I mean, like in the witch.
Yes, it's the
I don't
horn.
know so much.
Yeah. It's
What about you,
close. It's definitely close, but I'm deer.
Deer.
Because
Yeah.
it's like something about like, it's just a little deer, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit.
Okay, last one. Tragic ending, happy ending, or bittersweet ending?
Bittersweet, 10 out of 10.
Bittersweet. Yeah.
Yeah, bittersweet.
Bittersweet.
Yeah.
It's too
Well,
good.
I like the bittersweet ending because sometimes it can beg the question. I mean, it kind of depends on the person consuming it, whether they feel more happy or sad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it can be interpreted a lot of ways.
It's not well loved by all, but I like the endings that look happy and then you think for like 2 seconds
And you're like, oh, that's
wait a
Yeah.
second.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those. Like, you know, it seems super happy, and then you're like, but 70 people just died. And
Yeah.
like, you know,
It's
love
like
those.
they survived, but at what cost?
Exactly. Yes,
Literally.
exactly.
It's like the Midsommar ending where you're like, yeah, she's burning. Oh, she's in the cold.
Oh my gosh, I love the Midsummer ending.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So good.
All right.
We do have a few questions. So the very first one is from Finn, who asks, what was your favorite part about writing a horror anthology with other authors?
I will say I think for me anyway, a lot of the process felt very singular in the way that writing often feels until we got, I think it was past pages. And that was really cool when we got to see everybody's work like lined up together. It was really fun. Because for me, I was like, oh, I'm like writing my little short story. I'm doing my edits. I'm doing all this stuff like by myself. And then you see your work beside everyone else's and you're like, oh my God, we're in an anthology. And then it's like so cool. So for me, it was like that moment of it starting to feel real. That was very, very cool. So yeah, I liked being able to see everyone just sort of in the little line in the way that it was going to look when it came out. And I got really excited.
Yeah, well, it's like you realize you're in conversation with each other. And that's like really awesome.
That exact same thing, but like when the table of contents came out, like when that page came out, that was like, yes, that was sick. Like that was like a beat drop.
I think for me, it was when it was not only like exciting to see like everyone else's stories kind of come to life in the past pages, but then also when Circe was kind of like giving her reactions to my story and like talking about everyone else's stories and like how excited she was about them. It very much was like this kind of like, oh, we have like a nice little like universe of like stories here that we've crafted together, and it was really nice to like see it come from like everyone just like writing them in like their own spaces and then come together. It was very much a cool feeling.
Yeah. I feel like for me it was the getting to read the final thing, because I didn't run to read past pages because I'm a weird person. I was like, I want to read everything finished. And so like getting my copy and like opening it and like reading through and like seeing what everybody else had done, and like all those different like genres and takes and like styles, which I thought was really cool. Like people having all these different like styles and like getting to see that come together. Because like even if there's an author where I've like read a novel from them before, I feel like it's so different to see a short story medium because you can do different things. And so that was really cool to just like consume the collection.
Yeah.
We then have a question from Jeremiah, who asks, what do you all mostly enjoy writing, novels or short stories? I, for one, am part of the novel gang.
Same.
I used to say that I preferred novels to short stories, and now I think I genuinely love both mediums so much, but like for such different reasons. I think I'm like one of those people who gets like more ideas than I know what to do with. So most of the time I'm just like, this is either gonna rot in my brain or never become anything, or I needed to make it something. And being able to turn into a short story is such a quick and like effective way to be like, this idea now exists, I've done it, and it hasn't taken me 2 years to do it. So if I have an idea that's like really good, but I just feel like there's like one major scene or like one thing that I keep returning to, I'll make it a short story. But when there's like layers upon layers and scenes and character arcs and a bunch of different things, then I'll turn it into a novel. But yeah, I really love both. It just depends on like what I'm most interested in at that time, I guess.
Yeah, I'm novel gang too, but I think that's because when I was in university, I wrote a bunch of adult literary short stories and I burned out on them pretty quickly. So
what about you, Emmy?
I'm novel gang. Yeah, short stories are fun, and for a similar reason that you said, where it's like I have a billion ideas and I can't like write all of them, and I'm not about to write all of them. But novels, you get to really cut the hands off and stuff.
Awesome. We then have a question from Aurelia, who asks, what book or film would you recommend for people who want to get into horror?
I love this question. I would ask what your preferred subgenre is, but assuming you don't know what your favorite subgenre is, that's always my next question, is like, what subgenre are you interested in the most? I think like some good intro horror would be something that's like a little bit scary, but maybe not too much. Honestly, I would recommend The Haunting of Hill House to anyone. I feel like it is very emotional. It's very character driven. It's also still very spooky. I think it grabs you very quickly and it holds your attention for a long time. It is a show, so it's a bit more of a commitment than a movie, but I think it's a good place to start. For movies, I would have to think a little bit more, but the first thing that comes to mind, I was going to say Ready or Not, but I think Ready or Not gets a little intense at times.
Yeah, although I think it's fun enough that it would be a good like starter horror movie. Like,
yeah, I'd agree.
Like humor.
Yeah, there's some humor in it. There is gore, but I mean, also you've got Samara Weaving, and she's beautiful, and she has an amazing horror girl scream. So I feel like it's worth it. So those two things. Oh, I should probably pick a book. Interview with the Vampire. Just kidding. Don't read that.
You are not kidding.
Please don't read that first. I think you would find it very boring. All These Sunken Souls. There you go.
Oh, yeah. I think if you want to read like a slasher, like one that I read was it last year or the year before? I think it was the year before. A slasher that I really enjoyed was Clown in the Cornfield by Adam Cesare. It's like a really easy slasher to get into, and like I think it does nail like the beats of a good slasher quite well. And I think that book specifically is quite accessible to like new people who want to get into like slasher kind of books. In terms of films, I was raised on Final Destination, in terms of like kind of like that kind of like death is like your destiny kind of thing. And like you can't cheat death essentially. So I was raised on that mostly. So I kind of always like harken back to them when it comes to like recommending cool like horror like films for people that is also a bit like comedic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I was also gonna say
I
Final
feel
Destination.
like you can't. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying I was also gonna say Final Destination.
Yeah, well, I feel like you can't really go wrong with like the classic slashers. So like Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, like all those. They're classics for a reason, so you should watch them.
For me, if you were ever like, I want to get into horror the exact way that Sammy Ellis is into horror, here is the movies that I would suggest you watch. And you'll find out what type of horror you like. So the worst of them, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, definitely is my vibe. I recommend that to people. And I feel like y'all were talking about gore and stuff like that. I feel like if you're not into gore, I mean, like not being into horror doesn't necessarily mean you can't handle gore. So I would say if you know that you can handle gore, but you haven't tried horror yet, I would recommend Tucker and Dale. It's very gory. It's like basically a play on all of the classic slashers, but you watch a slasher, the killer is very killery. The whole story of that movie is basically these two guys, they seem killery, but they're just some normal dudes, and everybody looks at them and thinks they're killers, but they're not. So that's like the whole thing of the movie. It's just a bunch of jokes. Pitch Black. I know that you didn't think I was going to say that, but I was. That's a great, I want to be Sammy Ellis and love horror like that. Watch Pitch Black, love Pitch Black, life Pitch Black. Then the third one, controversially, Us. I felt when I watched Us for the first time, I felt seen in a way that had nothing to do with marginalization. I was like, wow, see me, know me. This is my kind of carrying on. I love everything that's happening right now. So I would consider those three movies like for people who want to get into horror that is very much of the genre, but also doesn't take it seriously. Like it's very self-aware. All of those movies are very self-aware horror flicks, except for Pitch Black. But I feel like it's funny how unself-aware it is. Like it's so unself-aware that it goes back around. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Final Destination. I was on board with that. Also, if you like the first one, then you can watch the rest.
And they're all pretty good, from what I remember. I like all of them.
I mean, they're a downward slope, but that's any franchise.
What's the one where they're on the whole freeway?
3.
The second.
Okay, yeah.
Or the freeway is the second.
That would traumatize me for life. Because anytime I'm driving on the freeway and I see a big ass truck carrying some stuff, I go to the other lane. I'm not following that truck.
Oh, Joel, you're muted.
Joel, you're muted.
Oops. I think the first one was the plane. The second one was the freeway. The third one was the roller coaster. And then I can't remember after that.
Racetrack and a car. Like it was like a bridge.
Oh.
Yeah. The suspension bridge.
Oh,
and then escalator? No, not escalator.
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 I remember that death.
It's one of the deaths.
I was like, it's a whole movie around me. I gotta watch
escalator.
it.
Okay, we'll probably take like one or two more questions. So if there's anything that you wanna have answered, ask it now. One question we have is from Finn, who asks, what is something you found difficult about writing a horror short story? Did you ever find yourselves wanting to make it a full-length story?
Good question. Yeah, no, I think that's what I love about writing short stories is they present a new challenge of executing something in a very small space. And with mine in particular, which I've I've pitched as like if the talented Mr. Ripley took place in a zombie apocalypse, that's my story. And for me, I always knew it was going to be a short tale. And I don't really see expanding it into anything more than that. I think it's good in the medium that it's in. But what about you guys?
I feel like for me, even within, again, because my story is so short, even within the medium it's in, I was like, I feel like if I add anything more, it'll take away from it.
Yeah.
So my story kind of, I feel anyway, no one in the story has a name. Let's start there. There are no named people in this story. They are only called by their titles and their jobs, which plays into the plot as well. But I feel like too much detail for this story would have made it into a completely different beast in a way. I think a big part of the horror for this story is you not knowing and is you not fully understanding. So I think if I were to make it longer, you would then fully understand. And then I would have to find some other way to make it scary. And I don't feel like doing all that. So short story. It stays short story just because it's simpler, it's easier, it's scarier. It needs to be tiny. It's a little tiny thing.
I think for me in this instance, I think the story would still remain a short story, but I think I'd like to explore the concept of it in a longer form. But I think in this instance with like this particular kind of tale, I just don't think it could have expanded in any way because I had already like cut stuff from the story that I was like, this could be something, but I couldn't explore it in reasonable depth. And I was just like, I don't really want to do that anymore. Like in one of the very first drafts of the story, it took place in America. And I was like, I don't want that anymore. So because I was like, oh, I'm the only like British author of this anthology. So I was like, oh, America could be fun. But I was just like, no, I need to go back to my roots. And so I think eventually, like, I would love to explore this kind of like toxic relationship in like a longer form. But this story, I don't think could ever be anything longer than it is now.
Yeah, I feel like I chose what I wanted to write because I knew it was going to be compact and it was going to fit in a short story and that I wasn't going to want it to be bigger because then I think I would have been upset that I put it in a short story. But I think what was difficult about it for me was kind of figuring out how much information to share and like how much to cut out. Especially as someone that like writes a lot of like fantasy and that sort of thing, like I have a tendency to want to answer like as many questions as possible about what's going on. And I think horror in general is like a very fine balance between like what you want to explain and what you don't want to explain, because you can explain too much and then suddenly it's not scary anymore. And so for me, it was really that kind of line of like, I don't want people to be so confused about what's going on and have so many questions, but I also don't want to waste time in the story waxing poetic about every little thing or like every little question that might pop up. And I found that to be kind of the most difficult part of like balancing that when you don't have the whole length of a novel to breadcrumb that in.
What about you, Sammy?
Mine was just no, not really. I didn't ever have that urge. I think that sometimes there are stories where you're like, yeah, I could expand this and I could make it a new world, but there are definitely stories that come to you contained. Or even if they didn't come to you contained, when you finished it, you were like, this is it. This is contained. And this is what the story is going to be. And now it's this one.
Yeah.
Amazing. I think I'm going to steal the final question for myself because I just thought of it and I was like, oh, I really want to see what everyone's answer is going to be. So if you were a character within a horror slasher, what would like your kind of archetype be? Like, would you be the final girl? Would you be kind of the murderer? Would you be, for me personally, I would be the one who figures out who the murderer is and then is killed.
I know exactly who I would be. I've talked about this at length before. So, you know the trope, like the black guy dies first. There is this new trope. Well, it's not new, but like I feel like they were trying to avoid that. Like horror movies are trying to avoid that. So they started making this black guy character that's like, I can't die. I've been in this whole time and I ain't about to die. I know I grew up in the streets. And then they immediately die. That's who I would be. And I love that character so much. Every time they show up in a movie, Samuel L. Jackson in Deep Blue Sea, you know, the football player in Final Destination, he was like, I do this, I does this. And he literally dies while he's saying his speech. Like, that's who I would be. I'm so excited if that happens. And I'll know mid-speech. I'll be like, oh, I'm about to get out of here. But I love it.
I also know exactly who I would be. Okay. I would be the like super materialistic femme girl who you're like, oh, she's dying first. Because she's not the final girl. You know she's not the final girl. And you assume that I would die early on, but then they keep me on because I'm like really funny. So they're like, okay, we'll kill her like towards the end so I can like do stupid things like throw a lipstick thing at the monster. And then be like, at least it's prettier now. And like just say stupid shit for the duration of the movie. And then I have like a very memorable kill. I like to imagine I also would become a cult favorite character. I'm not the final girl, but I am a memorable girl within
This reminds me of in Scream Queens when Ariana Grande gets murdered and she's like tweeting while she's like, help me please, someone is here.
I mean, that's so me. Except I would be between like, LO guys currently getting murdered. Isn't that so funny?
I immediately thought of Parker Posey in Scream 3, like how like she's like iconic to most people who say that there's their favorite movie. Whenever someone's like, Scream 3 is my favorite, I like, it's because of Parker Posey. It's Parker.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I'd be like, what? Oh no, go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh gosh. It's like you almost put me in Canadian standoff. But I feel like I'd be the person that would be like, I'm gonna run away and get help. And either I die instantaneously trying to run away, or I disappear and you think I'm dead, and then I show up right at the very end. Like, get out, I'm the friend in the car. I'm like, I showed up for you right at the right moment, or I'm dead. I died very quickly, almost immediately, the second I tried to escape.
I feel like I'm the weirdo character that everyone forgets is there until I say something. And they're like, oh, she's still here? Yes, I am.
I love that. It's like, oh, we thought you died like 3
it's like,
years
no,
ago.
I'm persistent.
It's like the final girl's by herself and she thinks she's the last one left and she's like crawling through the air vents and then she passes someone and she turns and it's you and you got like some chips and you're like, oh, I'm just hiding in here.
I'm the jump scared. I'm gonna kill her. No, it's just me.
I'm still here. I love that. Oh, wow. This has been such an amazing evening with all of you discussing our stories and like our horror roots. Thank you so much to Circe again for like hosting this discussion. It has been absolutely amazing. You can find all of the links in the description for everyone's Instagrams, I believe, so you can go follow everyone there. There's also Goodreads Storygraph and purchase links for all these Sunken Souls in the description as well. I believe it's Bookshop, Barnes and Noble, and there's another B, I believe. Blackwell's, yes. Because I know it's sold out on Amazon UK, but you can now purchase it through Blackwell's in the UK. So amazing. And I think that's all the housekeeping stuff that I have for now. If anyone else has anything they want to like shout out or like promote, now is your time to do so.
I know, Sammy and Lizelle, you have a couple books.
Oh yeah, I was like, I guess I should promote my book.
Yeah.
Do it.
It's coming out February 27th of 2024. Yeah, you can check it out on my social medias. I have links and stuff. And yeah, if you like private school horror, but with all needs-based kids, so you have less rich people in your story, this is the one.
My debut, Dead Girls Walking, is coming out March 26th of 2024. If you like really mean, really angry girls that are really mean and angry for good reason, but also not that good of a reason, that's the book for you.
Oh, thank you. And for everyone joining us tonight, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Your support has meant everything during this process in terms of like the initial hype for all these Sunken Souls. Now that it's been released and seeing everyone read it and review on Goodreads has just been so amazing. And yeah, I just can't wait to see everyone else's like reactions. And if you're coming to see us in person at any of the in-person events, that'll be very exciting. But yeah, I guess for now, all that's left to say is we hope you have a very great rest of your day and weekend, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. So yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.